It has been over 2 years since my heart was broken. It wasn't broken in one of the old traditional ways. No, my heartache came courtesy of a romance scammer. I not only had my heart broken, but lost $15,000 of my savings. It all started when my husband of 25 years dumped me for a 20-year-old Asian girl. I was devastated and had to go through all the pain of selling our home. The very home where we had raised a beautiful daughter and had tons of memories. Then, going to lawyers to unravel investments, moving to another state, and finding a new home I could afford. My whole world was turned upside down. I was lonely, so I decided to go onto a dating site. While I had heard about dating sites, I had never used one before. Soon after joining, I received a message from a handsome 65-year-old man calling himself Jeff Thomas. He said he was an engineer and lived in Northern California. I lived in Southern California, so the distance was not a huge issue. What made it less of an issue was that he told me he was willing to relocate, as he was about to retire. We chatted through the site for a while. Then he wanted me to talk to him through emails and phone. Of course, I was more than excited to meet him face to face. How could I not want to meet him? He was so handsome and nice. One day he said he had to return to Malaysia to complete a railway bridge he was building for the Malaysian government. I suggested I could fly up to meet him in Northern California before he left. He eagerly agreed, and we made arrangements for this rendezvous. I was nervous, but very excited to meet him. Well, the morning before I was about to fly out, he phoned saying he had to leave that morning as there was some problem, so we couldn't get together. After that, I had to be satisfied with numerous phone calls, Skype and emails. He had told me he could only Skype using audio because the video did not work on his computer. Our communications became relentless. It was like we couldn't get enough of each other. Our calls were often and varied. We talked in the morning, at lunch, in the afternoon, and late at night. I wondered how he could find so much time to communicate, as he was supposed to be building a railway bridge. He sent me pictures of the bridge. I was convinced this was real, even though there were many red flags. Well, after a couple of months, the problem started. First, he said his wallet had been stolen while in Malaysia. He told me all his credit cards and $70,000 in cash to pay his workers had been in the wallet. I recall asking him at the time about how he was able to fit $70,000 into a wallet. He ignored me and quickly moved on to another subject. By this time, he was talking about us buying a big house, traveling the world together, and other big plans. He even talked about marriage when he returned from Malaysia in a couple of months. He sent me a photo of some sort of a contract saying he was going to be paid $15 million for building the bridge. Then he said because his wallet had been stolen with all his credit cards, he couldn't get access to his accounts to pay his hotel. He even said he had no money for food. He wanted me to send $15,000 to him as soon as possible. I explained that I was retired and a pensioner, and that this would take almost all my savings. After hearing this, he started crying. Beneath his sobs, he told me that he would pay me back. In addition to paying me back, he was going to buy me a $2 million home that was for sale in the town I was living. Well, I hate to say this, but I sent him the money he needed. Then he asked me to sell the home that I owned, so he could pay his workers all the money he owed them, because they had not received all the money he owed them. They had gone on strike. I told him that this request was impossible. I certainly was not going to sell the home I lived in. It was at this point that I really started to become worried. He really seemed to lose it when I told him I just didn't have the money to do this for him. Then one day I received a phone call from his so-called attorney in San Francisco. He said he had been able to get $200,000 together to help Jeff. Then the lawyer said he wanted me to travel up to San Francisco to meet with him. From there, the attorney said I was to travel to Malaysia with the money strapped to my body under my clothes. I thought all this was some kind of joke. I told him I was only 5'2" tall. If I tried to smuggle that kind of cash, I would look like a sack of potatoes. Also told the lawyer that smuggling this amount of cash was probably illegal. I said that doing this would most likely get me some jail time. Then the attorney got extremely mad with me. Shortly after hanging up with the attorney, Jeff called. When I picked up the line, he was screaming at me, saying I didn't care about him. I finally realized he in fact didn't care about me, and this whole thing was a scam. I finally talked to my daughter and told her what was going on. Of course, she was flabbergasted. My daughter was smart enough to do a Google search using the words Jeff Thomas romance scammer. Sure enough, right there on Google, there was information and pictures of various scammers using Jeff Thomas as a name. There was also numerous different pictures and variations of the script he used with me. I was shocked when the first scam story I read from the Google search results was extremely similar to my Jeff Thomas's story. This Jeff Thomas said his first wife had passed away and that he owned an engineering and contracting oil business. This Jeff Thomas was also very charming and good-looking. This scam victim also indicated that she had talked on the phone daily, texted daily, and had emailed her Jeff Thomas for months. Then, the story took a slightly different turn than my Jeff Thomas. This Jeff Thomas had to go to Mexico on an oil rig to work for what was supposed to be 4 to 6 weeks. This Jeff Thomas had simply switched Malaysia for Mexico and working on a bridge for working on an oil rig. I just couldn't believe I was such a sucker. I also couldn't believe all I had to do at the beginning of this fake love affair was look it up on Google. My daughter showed me how typing Jeff Thomas into Google turned up pages and pages of results. Most of these results were useless to me. However, after using the words romance scammer after the name Jeff Thomas, made a world of difference on Google. Right there on the first page of the Google search results were several romance scam stories with the scammer using the name Jeff Thomas, along with various versions of the working overseas script. I reported my story to the police, blocked Jeff Thomas on my phone, and then proceeded to cry my heart out for days. I couldn't believe I was taken by this man. When I spoke to friends, they made me feel even worse. Most of them told me I was stupid, gullible, naive, and a host of other negative descriptions. So I just stopped telling my story to friends and family. However, I want to tell my story here so others can hear it and hopefully learn from my personal misery. Maybe some good can come from my experience. If only one person out there recognizes this story as something similar to what they may be experiencing, and it prevents them from being scammed, then I have done some good. I am still healing with good and bad days, and my financial security is wrecked. But I am still here and healthy. Thank you for your time.